This is the introduction video to my 18 videos long series about Wells Fargo's crimes against me and about the subsequent cover-up of Wells Fargo's crimes against me and the crimes involved in the cover-up. I originally made this video series in 2022. And you can see here, this is what they look like when I originally made this video series. I had over 130 videos that, as you can see, a lot of them very, very short, a lot of them. And we had these main sections, you know, privacy violation, mobile crisis, this, all of this. And what I've done is I've combined these videos, each major section, into one video so as to reduce the total number of videos, even though that the total playtime is unchanged. What these videos pertain to and what they go over is my years-long process that began in December of 2017 of collecting, organizing, and analyzing evidence for crimes that have been committed against me, and also civil law violations committed against me by Wells Fargo and all of the other parties involved. I began this in December of 2017, and the whole game changed in April of 19, and I've been doing this intensely since April of 2019, and again I made these videos in 2022, so at that point in 2022, by the time these videos are done, I've been about 5 years, almost exactly, that I've been collecting evidence, and again, it was really intense, and kind of an all-consuming thing beginning in April of 19, because I've been subjected, I was being subjected to ongoing and non-stop crimes. So as I'm collecting and analyzing and organizing evidence for one crime, I'm actively being victimized with another crime. And it all started in December of 17, or the events that I'm about to describe to you took place over a period of time between November of 2017 and December of 2017. It's towards the end of November 17 to about the first week of December 17 is when this happened. That Wells Fargo violated my rights. Where a senior manager who I was a problem for, I was a source of frustration for him. He didn't know how to deal with me. And so he puts my former co-worker named Jenny, and also almost certainly he's involved another co-worker named Toonie in this plan where they're going to get Jenny and or Toonie to quote unquote inquire about my past. And the way they go about doing that is they have Jenny. Jenny cons me out of a link to my Facebook profile. My Facebook profile at the time was set to maximum privacy. It was impossible to find me on a search, and I had that done deliberately. And so Jenny can't find me on a search, so she cons me out of a link to my Facebook profile. And once she's got that, she contacts a woman named Abby, named Abby Best, she went by at the time, who was a fugitive and a habitual criminal who had liked my cover photo. Now, Abby, again, as I say, I'm almost certain she was a fugitive in at least one state at the time they contacted her. She is a habitual criminal. She eventually became a fugitive in multiple states. If they had done their research, they would have found she was just let out of jail. I believe it was on larceny charges within a few days, 1, 2, 3 days of when they contacted her. But they're not interested in Abby's quote unquote past. They want to inquire about my existence, so they don't do any fact checking on Abby at all. They don't give a damn if they're talking to a habitual criminal. They've been put up to this, Abby, they inquire about my past with Abby. Jenny and possibly Toonie, but we'll just say Jenny. We'll just use Jenny for this narrative. Is that Jenny? They inquires about my past to Abby. And again, when you ask about somebody's past, you inquire about their past. It's like she's basically intruding on the entirety of my existence. There's nothing that's left out when you inquire about the entirety of my past. And one of the things that Abby that Jenny is told by Abby is that I've been to a quote unquote mental institution. And let me explain that, what she's referring to there. So right now, I am 43 years old at the present time. This is something that happened when I was 18. From ages 15 through 18, I was a troubled youth. I was involved. I began to drink alcohol at age 15. Then at ages 16 and 17, I became increasingly involved in marijuana. I was sometime around between the near the end of age 16 up into the beginning of age 17 that I'd become a habitual user of marijuana. And then towards the end of age 17 up into age 18, I became involved in hallucinogens. This was psilocybin mushrooms and LSD. There was one time, and I use these somewhat frequently, but there was one time towards the last time that I used these drugs, that I'd taken a very, very large dose of psilocybin mushrooms, and what happens is that I go off the deep end. I become disconnected from reality on a prolonged basis. That what happens, the way these hallucinogenic drugs work, as you know, you ingest this. If it's LSD, you ingest LSD, you ingest the mushroom, whatever you're taking, and it'll send you off into another world. Okay, you will be out in outer space, having this hallucinogenic experience, and then once the drug's out of your system, 10, 12, 14 hours, whatever it happens to be, that the drug is no longer in your system. You're back. You're out of the ozone. You're back on the ground, solidly. in Earth, solidly on Earth. But back with the program that everybody else is on. Okay. This experience you have of being taken outside of reality is due to these chemicals being in your system. Once they're all in your system, you come back. Well, that's how it's supposed to work. But what happened with me was, I take these drugs, and they're out of my system, and I'm still out in outer space. Okay, I'm disconnected from reality, that I didn't, quote unquote, come back the way that you're supposed to, and I'm far from the only person who's had this happen to them. It's some percentage of the people who either experiment with these drugs or use these drugs on a regular basis that this will happen. This prolonged disconnect with reality will happen. That basically, when you do these hallucinogenic drugs, you're playing Russian roulette with your brain chemistry, and the chamber I fired had a bullet in it. Okay, and so I had to be hospitalized at a psychiatric hospital where they gave me different medications until they found one that worked. And through giving me these medications over time in this hospital, I was able to come back the way that I was supposed to come back. Okay, these drugs that I'd used, they permanently injured my brain chemistry such that I have to have a medication. Had to be put on medication to get my brain chemistry working back the way that it is supposed to. So after 72 days in this hospital, I was doing well enough. We were doing real well, actually, and I was returned back to home. And subsequent to being returned home, because I have to be on medication for the rest of my life, due to my brain chemistry being injured, and so I start to receive regular outpatient medical care where I get scripts for medications are written, and I also took part for years of counseling, psychological counseling, with a PhD. I'm a psychologist, but also I was given a diagnosis based on my symptoms of what happened to me. I was given a diagnosis of bipolar disorder type 1. Okay, this thing where I go off the deep end and I don't come back was basically these drugs had triggered the onset of an enduring mental illness. Now, what's very important to understand about this, or actually there are a few things that are very important to understand. I said, again, this is a temporary time in my life. Okay, when I was 18, I turned 19 in the hospital, actually. Over the 72 days that I was there, it was about a week before I left that I turned 19. And again, now I'm 43. I've been doing very, very well ever since then. Okay, for decades, I've had no problems whatsoever. I have made a whole lot of progress in life. So subsequent to getting out of this hospital, I did have a little bit of a short time there where I had to get my act together a little more completely. But that was around, by age, again, I turned 19 in the hospital, and then it was, around age 20, somewhere around there, that I even ended up stopping smoking cigarettes. Which, if I smoke cigarettes, I very, very strongly recommend that you stop smoking cigarettes. That I became like a really, really straight edge person, which is how I am now. I wanted to have a career playing billiards for a living, playing 9-ball. And I worked myself to death to build a garage, to put a professional pool table in, and I was going to practice and try to play on the tour. Now that got disrupted. That didn't work out, and I ended up, for a brief time, I was into selling real estate, and then subsequent to that, I went back to school, and I was one of the top few graduates in the business school's finance department at the college I went to at ASU. I was in all kinds of honor societies. I was the top performing employee, top performing banker at 2 banking jobs in a row. I eventually became a self-taught web developer, started a web development business that I did on the side. All of these things that happened back when I was 18 have absolutely nothing to do with the present day as of April of 2024. When they did this in December of 17, November, December 17, I was 37 years old. So this is back 18, 19 years before that. It had absolutely nothing to do with anything that's happening when I'm 37. This is old news. And certainly, this thing, it's a pejorative sounding thing. It has pejorative connotations to say that somebody's been to a mental institution. I went to a hospital to get treated. Okay, so there's nothing to this. Okay, again, I didn't go. I went to a hospital to get treated, and so this completely has nothing to do with anything that's going on with Wells Fargo inside our department. Has nothing to do with the fact that this manager the senior manager can't get along with me. It's a non sequitur. Aside from the fact that this is a vulgar intrusion into my life, that I've been to this hospital, period, at all. Nothing about my health care is anything, any of these people's business. Okay. And so following what happens with Jenny and them inquiring about my past, Jenny tells everybody all the stuff that she hears, all the stuff that Abby tells her when she again inquire about the entirety of my existence. And it's taken me a while to put together everything that was said or what was said. I don't know everything that was said, but I know some of what was said. And the overall theme is a combination of true things that have been grotesquely exaggerated to the point that they don't reflect reality. It's flat out lies, I'm sure, and there might have been some things that were true there as well. That all the exaggerated things, all the outright lies, and all the true things. Every bit of this is stuff that's none of these people's business whatsoever. But Jenny goes and tells all this, not just to Bill, but to her coworkers, her friends at the bank, and management. Here's this, and instantaneously in December 17, after Jenny does this, my life mutates into hell. I start to be treated like absolute dirt by my coworkers. Blatant disrespect, outright cruelty, violations of the law, discrimination, you name it. I am treated like absolute shit because of these people's perceptions of me based on having a mental illness and being sent to a quote-unquote mental institution. Okay, and this absolutely destroys my life. And I know what's happened roughly as soon as it's happened. Okay, so when Jenny does this, when she calls me out of a link to my Facebook profile, I don't immediately think anything there. She gives me a very, very strange reason as to why she needs a link to my Facebook profile. It seemed odd to me, but that amounted to nothing. But once I go back to my workplace, and instantly, I go overnight from being a very, very respected, deferred to, even admired person among my coworkers to be treated like absolute dirt. I know exactly what has happened. That this reaction that people have to me is nothing new to me. Okay, that I'd moved to Charlotte, North Carolina to start a new life, to work for the banks, build a career, work for the banks in Charlotte, North Carolina, and to two, to escape the hell that I'd left in the previous place that I lived at in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And when I lived in the mountains of Western North Carolina, all kinds of horrible rumors went around about me concerning me being at this hospital that I'm sure very similar to what Abby told Jenny, and I needed to escape this hell, and I'm very, very, very familiar with this reaction where people think I'm the greatest thing on earth, and then all of a sudden, one day later, they treat me like absolute garbage. This is nothing new to me, and so I know that something else has happened. I know that someone at work has talked to someone from the mountains back where I used to live, where all this stuff goes on, and for reasons I won't explain here, I essentially was 100% sure that it was Abby that had been talked to due to the circumstances around what had happened around the time that Jenny had conned me out of a link to my Facebook profile. Now, I have no clue that Wells Fargo was ultimately behind it. My focus is on Jenny because it was apparent to me from the very beginning, once this happened, that Jenny knows more about it than Jenny is saying. Okay, because Jenny claims she doesn't know nothing, that nothing happened, stuff like this. So again, this is in December 17. We end up arguing about this for almost a year and a half consecutive before the next escalation comes. And it was it was actually in February of 19 that me and Jenny are having an argument about this. And Jenny's facade cracks, okay, because this is really hard on Jenny for reasons that will become, the reasons that are obvious to you right now. Okay, she's done this horrible thing that's destroyed my life. She's been lying to me about it the whole time, and she's seeing the destruction that's being poured all over my life. It's bothering her, and this is a real hard thing for her to deal with, and eventually her facade cracks, and she sells the farm. That she was the one, or among the ones who had reached out to Abby. Okay, she just kind of says, well, I talked to her, and she said you've been in a mental institution. Is that what you want to hear? She says this. And you'll see that in the video about the privacy violations, so I'll skip the whole thing. But it becomes apparent that Jenny was directly involved in this in February of 19. We continue to argue about this on and off, and we start to argue in April of 19, and that is when the crimes begin. Now remember, I told you I have a bipolar disorder type 1 diagnosis. The people at Wells Fargo know that I have a mental health condition, and the crimes that Wells Fargo initiates, starting here with this mobile crisis scam, and this is that they try to have it documented on my medical records. They basically have fraudulent medical records, prepared that characterize my belief that Wells Fargo had invaded my privacy as some sort of mental illness symptom. Okay, that I basically hallucinated this, that Jenny has quote unquote looked into my past and all of this stuff. And so in this video, in the mobile crisis scam, we start talking about the scams that happened in April of 19. I've got plenty of evidence for that, but what they do is that Wells Fargo pays a crisis line in Charlotte, North Carolina to create a fraudulent set of healthcare records. They get Jenny to con me out, to con me in to letting these crisis counselors come to my apartment. These crisis counselors tell me that I'm fine after a 45-minute visit, roughly. They tell me that I'm fine, that I've just had a bad day, and all I need to do is eat a cheeseburger or maybe do some work on my computer. After they tell me this, they go and prepare a set of healthcare records to be filed is their internal notes that are bullshit from point A to point Z, blatant fraud, making me out to be the most mentally ill person on the face of the earth. Okay? And then 3 months after they visit my apartment, roughly, one of these crisis counselors pays off her mortgage. She had a mortgage that had about a balance of about $186,000. She pays it off free and clear, and it's obvious who's the big money player behind this that can afford to pay off, to give her enough money to pay off her, $186,000 roughly mortgage, which now is a good time to tell you, to bring up that I have plenty of evidence for all of this. I've got essentially an airtight case for what I say has occurred. My evidence consists of what you might call hard evidence, okay, third-party evidence. I've got documents that are obviously forged. I've got recorded phone calls where people are doing things that are definitively incriminating. I've got recorded telehealth appointments with different healthcare providers where we're having a telehealth appointment. I'm recording it, and you will be able to see what I tell them and what gets on these the notes that they produce. They're obviously deliberately preparing my records fraudulently. I have got all sorts of stuff along those lines. This will be a very, very good story for a news media company due to the fact that I've got hard evidence. That's what newspapers want. Newspapers, broadcast networks, all of this. They don't just want a story. They want some hard evidence. I've got plenty of hard evidence. I also have my narrative, my personal account of what has happened. Okay, so I obviously haven't cataloged every moment of my existence, and that includes every moment of my existence during the time that all of this is going on. Okay, so in lieu of having a second-by-second record of everything that occurs, I give you my account of what has occurred. Okay, that I tell you the story behind all of this, and I narrate what happens as we go along. Then I have circumstantial evidence. Then I have my own reasoning. My reasoning, where I apply logic and reason and kind of think like a detective, where I'll show you how to connect the dots here from point A to point B to point C for all of these crimes to see how these crimes have occurred. Now, very important, included in my reasoning, is that I will often analyze people's behavior similar to what a detective would do. And so if you've ever watched a true crime show or something where they've got an interrogation with some person who has committed a crime, and the detective's asking them questions and they're answering, and then the detective afterwards gives commentary, well, look at this guy, we're accusing him of these horrible crimes, and he's cool as a cucumber. I'm answering our question like he's some kind of robot. That normally when people are accused of crimes, that they get really amped up, they get frustrated. They don't sit there and talk to you in a monotone voice, and that's kind of funny. Okay, I do analysis along these lines where I point out how these people are selling the farm, the way that they behave, that they're guilty. They know it, and they unintentionally, the people involved in these various crimes, they unintentionally let on to stuff all the time, and I happen to have a knack, kind of largely innate. This is, it's like a talent that I have. It also ties back to experiences that I have in my life, but I'm very, very, very good. I'm at picking up on what people unintentionally let on, which that's what you judge people on, by the way. You judge people based on what cannot be faked and based on what they unintentionally let on. And when I get into this, I'm analyzing people's behavior in this manner. I'm good at this. I have such an acute ability to read people, to read into people's behavior, things along these lines, that there will be times when probably it makes no sense to you what I'm saying. Okay, that you're finding it hard to understand what I'm saying. There'll be other times when what I say makes perfect sense to you. You'll see exactly what I'm saying. You'll be agreeing with me as you watch this. That this person's behavior makes no sense whatsoever. They're guilty of sin. This is fishy. Stuff along these lines. Now, again, I've got so much evidence of all the different forms of evidence that I've told you that it's not going to amount to a hill of beans. A few instances, 2, 3, 4 instances, where you're not on the same page with me as to how this person's behavior doesn't add up. That I have got an absolutely overwhelming airtight case for a slew, okay, and it scores hundreds of felonies as of the present date. Felony counts have been committed against me, and if you go through these videos, you will see that very clearly. Which, on the note of figuring out what people are up to by the way they act, one relevant factor here is poor little Jenny. It took me forever to figure this out, and it rips my heart out. Poor little Jenny is not all there. She's very smart and capable, okay, in a lot of ways. But she's got some kind of deficit, and you can always tell what people are up to about what poor little Jenny magically knows and claims that she thought up on her own. But that was, we have this scam with these crisis counselors, and what happens is subsequent to this scam on April 17th, 2019 is the day that these crisis counselors visit me within a few days. And by the way, with these crisis counselors, this is one of Jenny's personal friends. I'm essentially 100% sure, or personal acquaintance. Jenny knows one of these crisis counselors that she cons into coming to my apartment, and you'll see in my evidence and in the videos that I've got the copy of this fraudulent healthcare record. I go over it in my videos. You see, we got a 23-minute video here. I go over the fraudulent notes in some detail. In this video. Which now is a good time to point out. You'll have access. I'll provide you access to the evidence if you want it. But there's no acute need to go through the evidence yourself to be able to see, what I'm saying. Okay, that I go over the evidence in these videos. I go over the evidence. I've got evidence analysis materials, PDFs that I prepared, and stuff like this. That I go over the evidence so thoroughly in these videos that the typical person will be able to see very easily. The very obviously crimes have been committed. They'll be able to follow my reasoning. But if you do want to look at the evidence, I've got the full copy of this fraudulent healthcare record, and it is blatant, obvious fraud. Okay, my old psychologist from the mountains, I looked at this healthcare record, and he could tell within a few minutes, like 3 minutes of looking at this or less, that these healthcare records are an absolute scam. They're deliberate fraud. But Jenny's crisis counselor friend, along with Jenny and her police officer neighbor, go and file a false pretense civil commitment petition against me based on known to be false, known to be fraudulent claims. And the evidence, as you go through these videos, you will see the evidence adds up to absolutely 100%. Wells Fargo was behind this false pretense civil commitment. And this process here, again, with Jenny's police officer neighbor, a friend / neighbor, with Jenny's crisis counselor, Atrium Health, so Jenny's crisis counselor friend, Atrium Health was involved. There are a slew of extraordinarily serious crimes committed with this false pretense civil commitment petition. And Jenny's personal acquaintance, a crisis counselor, accompanies her to the magistrate. They file this false pretense civil commitment petition. And I'm sure this counselor told the magistrate a lot of the same stuff that the counselor wrote on these fraudulent healthcare notes, which these counselors were counting on me, and Wells Fargo were counting on me never having the internal record of this crisis line visits. They've intended to have this fraudulent record made so they could be subpoenaed if I ever challenged them in court. Now, what happens here with these scams right here is we start to establish a pattern. Okay, they commit these crimes. I build evidence. I pretty much catch them red-handed. I'm onto them. I know what's happened. Then in this as I explained in this video here, that I am, when they file this petition, this false pretense civil commitment petition, the hospital, Atrium Health, does admit me, partly because at least one person at Atrium Health was obviously involved in this scam. You'll see that in the evidence. But whether the doctor that admitted me was involved in this scam or not, they do admit me in the early morning hours of April 22nd, so about 3 a.m. on April 22nd, that I'm admitted to this hospital to be kept against my will. And by late evening on April 23rd, the hospital has concluded that there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. Their comments on my notes are that I am insightful and well composed. Okay, so on April 17th, we got these healthcare records that portray me as paranoid, delusional, active psychosis. You'll see the bullshit when I go to these videos. It's like a cram full of mental health buzzwords about how mentally ill I am on April 17th. They filed it. They do this scam on April 21st. I arrive at the hospital right before midnight on April 21st. I'm admitted at 3 a.m. April 22nd, and all of a sudden, by April 23rd, I'm insightful, well composed. I'm acting as I always have. Okay, it's very important to note here that Atrium Health is where I get my regular health care, and so they've got built up a body of notes about me and about how my personality, how fast I talk, stuff like this. This backfires big time. These scams right here, and at this time, as of this hospital stay, I had not obtained these healthcare notes yet. Okay, so I don't know the full scope of this scam at the time, but Wells Fargo certainly knows. So they're in big damn trouble, and what they do is they start to try to commit crimes through Atrium Health. They want to obtain my medical records. Okay, and you'll see that in the Atrium Health fraud videos. You will see how I've got an employee at Atrium Health's finance department asking for my social security number under false pretenses, using spurious reasons. When you go over the evidence and you look at these videos, just look at these videos, you will see very obviously they are out for my medical records. That's what surely the Atrium Health Finance wants. And when you go over the evidence, you will see that Wells Fargo is behind this. And what they're doing, so Atrium Health has my records with Atrium Health, and what they're trying to do with this, they want to get my social security number so that they can file a Medicaid application behind my back and obtain my healthcare records from this hospital that I was at when I was 18. Okay, they need a point in their favor now that they've committed enough crimes. So literally, I'm an existential threat to this bank as of this point right here. Okay, the crimes involved here are so incredibly serious, and I have such good evidence that literally that this is the end of this bank, and it is prison time for these executives that are behind this. Whoever's behind this, the bank. It's long prison time. It's prison time for the officer, a big time prison time for all kinds of people involved in the hypothetical that the law applied to Wells Fargo. And so they need a point in their favor, and they're thinking maybe they can find something on my healthcare records that will prejudice a judge or a jury against me, or an authority, or whatever. And so they can get my records from Atrium Health. They've already corrupted Atrium Health in these scams right here. You'll see in the evidence that Atrium Health was obviously involved in this crime. This is a coordinated crime. Okay, planned and executed. So it's absolutely no problem at all to get Atrium Health to get my records from Atrium Health, but they want my records from this other hospital that I was at when I was 18, that at that time they don't know how to get those. And so they've obviously, when you watch these videos, you'll see that Charlotte Atrium Health is extraordinarily, at the finance department, is extraordinarily motivated to get my full 9-digit social security number. Her level of motivation in the face of the risk that she is taking by committing this crime cannot be explained unless somebody has offered her a fortune to get these healthcare records. Now, the next crime that occurs is these HIPAA violations. And what happens here is I tell my nurse practitioner at Atrium Health, because again, I go there to get regular care, outpatients, regular care at their outpatient clinic. And I tell my nurse practitioner, psychiatrist, who prescribes my medications, I tell her about the fishy behavior coming from the finance department, how they're asking for my social, they're trying to get my healthcare records. Now, the first time I tell her this in June of 2019, she thinks I'm overanalyzing it. She wants me to drop the subject. She's not really interested. She thinks that I'm overly focused on the situation. But then on a second appointment on June 13th, I get her more details about this thing with the finance department and the fraud. And this gets her gears turning. A nurse practitioner named Kathy. She realizes that her hospital is involved in very, very, very suspect behavior, of very, very, very serious crimes. And of course, you've got to remember, by this time, it's in June of 19. She's already seen some of the fishy stuff here. So the civil commitment, there's all kinds of fishy details here, including a blatantly fraudulent or forged documents is part of what's involved here. And those documents are on Atrium Health's records. Now, I had assumed that Atrium Health and my nurse practitioner would care and would be offended by the fact that this bank is using their hospital to abuse their patients. They don't give a damn. Atrium Health does not give a damn if employees inside Atrium Health are committing crimes. They don't give a damn about anything other than themselves. And so once this, on the second appointment on June 13th, 2019, that I give my nurse practitioner these more incriminating details, she gets a really disturbed look on her face as I'm walking out. It's like something is bothering her real bad. I can tell, and it has something to do with me. I can tell because her demeanor towards me, and what that is I'm a liability for their hospital, big time. And it was sometime after this appointment on June 13th, probably very, very fast, I'd say within a couple of hours, this happened. Where the hospital, Kathy in particular, goes to scurry to cover their own ass. They've got their finance department engaged in obvious crimes. I've got evidence. I've got recorded phone calls with their finance department, and they've got Jenny's number on their records. On my records, they've got Jenny's number due to this civil commitment thing here in this hospital stay, which I never authorized them to talk to Jenny, I never authorized them to put her down as a contact. And after they did put her down as a contact, I found out I deauthorized of Jenny, so they're not allowed to call Jenny, period. Not like they give a damn. They go to scurry and cover their own ass and contact Jenny, but essentially they get in with Wells Fargo. It's just like any and everything that I've ever told Atrium Health, whether it's on my records or not. It's fair game, and it's like they're telling Wells Fargo any and everything that Wells Fargo wants to know about me concerning my private health information, that I'm a liability for them. I'm also a liability for Wells Fargo, and so the Wells Fargo and Atrium Health began to work together to evade the liability, including again there are multiple people at the hospital facing prison time. When my hospital and when Kathy reaches out to Jenny, like this is a felony. This is prison time. This is the end of her career. Again, HIPAA violations are felony crimes. All of this, and so I've got a bunch of people at this hospital facing prison time. I've got people at Wells Fargo, again, hypothetically facing prison time. If you assume that they're accountable to the law, which they're not. So I've got them facing prison time. And so they began to be involved in ongoing crimes against me to try to weasel out to get out of this liability that I pose for them, both the financial liability, okay, when their finance department is committing fraud, that is a just cause, as I understand it, for the state of North Carolina to take back the federal Medicaid funds that were distributed to Atrium Health, okay, which are about $200 million to $250 million a year. Okay, so for this hospital, potentially $250 million plus monetary liability. I've got multiple people facing prison time at this hospital, civil litigation, the whole thing, and so it's like they've got to evade this liability, and at some point Wells Fargo has informed them that they're above the law, they're not going to get prosecuted. And they decided that the best way to handle the situation is to jump in the dog pile with a $2 trillion bank and beat the living hell out of their patients. Okay, and then this is the cycle that I'm talking about. They commit a crime. Here's the cycle. Wells Fargo commits a crime. I catch Wells Fargo committing a crime. Or actually here, they commit a civil law violation. I catch Wells Fargo in committing a civil law violation. Wells Fargo commits a crime to try to get out the civil law violation. Okay, I catch Wells Fargo in that crime. Wells Fargo goes and corrupts Atrium Health. Atrium Health thinks they're going to get away with it. I catch them in that crime. Atrium Health and Wells Fargo commit crime in an attempt to get out of their previous crime. I catch them in that crime. Okay, so I'm on to this immediately when they got these HIPAA violations. I catch them in that crime. Okay, and so I catch them in that crime, and it's a vicious cycle where Wells Fargo thinks that Wells Fargo is going to always get, Eastern Health as well. They always think they're going to get away with the next thing, which, as you'll see, as the facts turn out, they absolutely do always get away with the next thing. I guess the way to rephrase that last one is that they always think they're going to get caught with the next thing, in the sense that I'm not going to build evidence in a case to conclusively prove that they have done wrong, which I've got extraordinarily powerful evidence for all this, as I say, that in relation to the law enforcement authorities, there's no such thing as not getting away with the next thing. Okay, they go with the first thing, the last thing, and everything in the middle. I'm trying to see the authorities and the regulators in a better light. I've been trying to do that for a while. I'm actually, I would like to get to a point to where we could just have a thing where people just made a mistake. But as it stands right now, the punishment or the consequence that Wells Fargo is potentially exposed to when they commit scores of felonies, and when they induce people all over my city, like they did to me, or over a city, the way they did to me, when they induce those people into crimes and engage in the planning and the execution of very, very serious crimes, the potential consequence they're exposed to that has an ability to motivate them is that their image as a business takes a blow. Okay, that people see that this despicable conduct, and they don't want to do business with a company that conducts itself this way, that commits these vicious crimes, which is important to note that following this scam right here, these two scams right here, after this, the crimes here involved in this is a brutal, merciless, cruel abuse they perpetrated, particularly when you put it in the context of everything that's happened over this time. I am disabled with PTSD, very severe PTSD, from this moment forward. So doing all of this whole crime spree that we're going to go over here, and that's in my videos, they are mercilessly abusing a disabled man. Okay, Wells Fargo is mercilessly abusing a disabled man. Mainstream Health is mercilessly abusing a disabled man who is their patient, and everybody else that's involved is mercilessly abusing a disabled man. Okay, but that's it. That's the cyclical pattern we have. They break the law. And I catch them. They break the law again in an attempt to get out of breaking the law. The last time I catch them again, they break the law. It's like their default response to everything is to commit more crimes. Okay, it's like that's how they know they know how to go about life. And that's the toolbox they're carrying. Is to put a nice face out to the world and commit crimes behind the scenes to serve their own interests. And that they don't seem to have a diversity of behavioral strategies to approach life outside of that. That it's brute force, crime, basically exercising their enormous power as a $2 trillion bank and exercising their criminal impunity. These whole crimes can be broken down into just maybe 2, 3, 4 main components. I'll do that in a second to tell you how to understand this in terms of simple terms. But to give you a preview of what happens is all through this, there is increasingly, they constantly employ the same strategy, just like they try to make it look like to have it portrayed that my belief that this privacy violation occurred was a symptom of my mental health condition. They start to try to portray my belief the rest of these crimes are a symptom of my mental health condition. And they do that by creating fraudulent healthcare records to that end. I'm also disabled, Wells Fargo has caused this, that they've committed crimes against me and induced my city into crime. So Wells Fargo and Wells Fargo's accomplices are culpable. I'm a liability for them. And of course, everything that's done is done for the interest of Wells Fargo. They're the people that matter to everyone. They're the people that matter. I'll tell you in a minute about how I submit a complaint to the Justice Department. Wells Fargo, that's who matters to the Justice Department. Okay, that's whose interests they're out to protect at all costs. Atrium Health, they're doing everything for Wells Fargo because Wells Fargo's impunity is their ticket out of punishment. Again, I've got people facing prison time. I've got people, I've got a hospital with hundreds of millions in liability. 200 million, 250 million a year that they get in Medicaid funds. That every year they commit crime against me. They're exposed to the state prosecuting them and taking those funds back. They get to piggyback on Wells Fargo's impunity. We've got to the situation where Wells Fargo is above the law. Wells Fargo knows Wells Fargo is above the law. And if they prosecute Atrium Health, that would necessarily involve exposing Wells Fargo's crimes. Necessarily involve, would put the onus on the authorities to prosecute Wells Fargo. And that factor right there is a deal breaker. That as long as Wells Fargo is in the picture, Atrium Health can do whatever they want. And of course, at this point, Atrium Health has impunity for the rest of their existence. Okay, if you go to Atrium Health, if you're going to a hospital that is above the law, that is caught the impunity of Wells Fargo, that how it works. Wells Fargo commits crimes. They induce their accomplices to commit crimes, and Wells Fargo has impunity. And due to this thing that I've mentioned, where you prosecute one, you prosecute the other, anybody that Wells Fargo involves in Wells Fargo's crimes, they catch the impunity like it's a bug. Which impunity that means they're above the law. They can commit crimes freely without any consequence or any material consequence. The focus of this is that I'm a liability for Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo's got to build the strongest legal case that they can against me, or in defense of their actions. That's what they want to do. They're not interested in making it right. They're interested in defending their own interests through crime. And my profound impairment, which I'm still disabled to this day, by the way, I'm extraordinarily handicapped. You'll notice if you look at the timestamps on these videos, it's taking me all day to make a video. I'm profoundly suffering. I'm impaired. I'm profoundly impaired. I'm disabled. And all of this is a liability for Wells Fargo. Okay, we go to court. They're going to bring my medical records in there, and if my medical records accurately reflect how disabled, how impaired, how handicapped I am, how profoundly I suffer, that is a liability for Wells Fargo. So the second element of the healthcare fraud, in addition to deliberately making false claims that I'm suffering from serious mental illness symptoms. I've got serious mental illness symptoms that make me think I've been chronically victimized. The other element of the healthcare fraud is a deliberate discounting or leaving out entirely my impairment and my suffering. Okay, I'm profoundly impaired. I'm profoundly suffering. Okay, I've been destroyed by these crimes. I'm suffering horrifically, which back this time in 2019 and 2020, it's like towards the last months of 2019 and for the first several months of 2020, I am profoundly handicapped. Okay, I mean, it's like I can't do anything, it's like I pace the floors 15 hours a day, having traumatic stress reactions for some reason. When I have these traumatic stress symptoms, I start to have this compulsion to be busy, and I can't do anything but pace the floor. Okay, it's like somehow it's like I'm suffering like hell, and I suffer, and instead of suffering at 100%, I suffer at 99.5%. If I'm pacing, so I spend on the typical day, I'm spending 15 hours, 14 hours, 15 and a half hours pacing the floor. I'm in absolute torment, craving death intensely. I also had a bankruptcy case where I was sued for credit card debts by Discover Bank, which they committed crimes as well. And there were crimes committed in this process where I was sued by Discover Bank. I have very, very strong reason to believe that Discover Bank participated in those crimes. And so I'm facing the loss of everything that I own due to being sued. And, I've got this bankruptcy case, and I can't do it. I can't fill out the paperwork. I can't do what I'm supposed to do according to the court's deadlines. And, if I mess up this bankruptcy, my case is going to get dismissed. As soon as my case is dismissed, Discover Bank had already initiated a process where they would be able to sell everything that I own to collect on their credit card debt. Okay, so they're going to rob a disabled man in his darkest hour. Okay, that's the kind of people you're dealing with when this finance industry's got some problems. This is the hell that I'm in. And I desperately need disability income. I need to get approved for Social Security disability. I can't work. My mother, who as of 2019 and early 2020, she was making like $10 an hour. Okay, my mother's a mentally challenged woman. Who has managed gas stations her whole life, and there for a brief period during this time, instead of managing it, she was a regular employee. She was making $10 an hour, and my rent is $900 a month. Eventually gets to the point that it's $1,000 a month, and my mom's, she back then when she was making that kind of money, she was working 100 hours a week plus, so she's murdering herself, paying my bills. Her money's running out. She cashes out she has some small retirement accounts that she cashes out to pay my bills. So I need disability income. But the problem is that the Social Security Administration has a very, very, very high standard for what they consider disabled. I meet that standard. And if my medical records accurately reflect my impairment and my suffering, I will get approved, and that will harm Wells Fargo's legal case. Okay, because that's going to give me leverage in the courtroom if I have been considered disabled by the very, 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 very high standards of the Social Security Administration. So they want to make sure I get declined for Social Security disability. They want to make sure that if and when my medical records make it to court, my suffering is not on there. And so Atrium Health cooperates with Wells Fargo in falsifying my medical records. Now, to go back to what I was saying about putting this into to kind of grouping these crimes. So the first thing you have is the privacy violation. That's kind of a group in its own. This is one law violation that's in its own category. Okay. The second grouping is the initial crimes in April of 19, where Wells Fargo attempts to cover up their crimes through having these fraudulent healthcare records prepared and filing the false pretense of civil commitment. So here, in this portion right here, this is the next category, the next section, is they try, or the section where they try to evade consequences for the privacy violation by making false claims about my mental health and having mental illness and stuff like this. Okay, then. These go into a grouping, the Atrium Health fraud and the HIPAA violations. Okay, these are optional sections where I narrate what's going on with me during this time. The Atrium Health fraud and the HIPAA violations. This is another grouping that these kind of go together. This is the next major set of events that happens. It's when Wells Fargo induces Atrium Health into crime. I catch Atrium Health in their crimes, and Atrium Health they turn into foaming at the mouth criminals, and start to engage in ongoing crime. That's a major marker. Okay, and then the next grouping all relates to the ongoing healthcare fraud. That what happens is Wells Fargo and Atrium Health start to subtly, and in the beginning, starting in about February of 2020. They do this to some extent in 2019. But it kind of gets amped up a notch in 2020, starting in February 2020. Wells Fargo and Atrium Health, again, cooperating. Atrium Health makes my medical records. They start to lay the groundwork for a future claim that Wells Fargo, for a future claim that my belief that all these crimes occurred is a symptom of my mental health condition. Okay, now they lay the groundwork, and what happens is then, again, they start to lay the groundwork really good in February of 2020. And you'll see that in my healthcare records when you watch this video, how they're laying the groundwork. Then I file a complaint to the Justice Department in March of 2020. The Justice Department tells me that my complaint is not sufficiently detailed to do investigation, and so I go and put myself to work to type up a more detailed complaint. And again, typing this detailed complaint is murder on me, because if I'm lucky on a given day if I have 2 hours a day that I can do anything. That was typically back then. I would be lucky if I had 30 minutes of a day that I could do anything. And so it takes me 7 months to write a new complaint. And what happens in the intervening time between March of 2020, when I submit my first complaint, and in October of 2020, when I submit my second complaint, is Wells Fargo and the Justice Department get together concerning these crimes. Wells Fargo, the Justice Department starts to get the gravity of these crimes. Okay, they realize the seriousness of what has occurred, such that by the time that I'm submitting my complaint here on October 28th, 2020, a cover-up is already underway. Okay, there's already an active plan to cover up these crimes, and that was actually executed right here. This is part of it. Also this, that once Wells Fargo gets the blessings and the backing of the Justice Department for their crimes, they that's when they amp up the healthcare fraud. They've got the foundation laid, and they start to massacre me with crime involved in making fraudulent healthcare notes to get me declined for disability, to portray me as mentally ill, and they initiate they do merciless, cruel abuse of me left and right during this time period. And so the next grouping is. You got I left off with this. They become fun with the mouth criminals. Then we've got here this background to healthcare fraud. This is where Atrium Health and Wells Fargo cooperatively engage in executing a plan where they're going to portray my belief that these crimes occurred as symptoms of my mental illness. And then following that, we have this all can go to a group by itself. The healthcare fraud, the No Want Health scam, the background of the final crimes, and the final crimes. All of those sections pertain to the healthcare fraud that occurs once the Justice Department begins to sponsor the crimes against me. And again, to repeat, this all involves covering up Wells Fargo's crimes through making fraudulent claims that I suffer from serious mental illness symptoms that may cause me to believe that I've been subjected to these crimes. And again, the other element is the discounting and the discounting or the complete absence of my suffering and my impairments in my healthcare records. That basically what they want to do. Okay, the Justice Department, Wells Fargo, everyone, primarily the Justice Department, Wells Fargo, they're in charge. Wells Fargo is the primary party involved in this. When I submit a complaint, the U.S. DOJ, it gets processed by Wells Fargo with the sponsorship of the Justice Department. That the Justice Department plays a very, very, very minor role relative to Wells Fargo. This is Wells Fargo's thing. And the goal of all of this healthcare fraud, where they portray me as being mentally ill, or where they have me declined for disability, where they have me as not suffering, and all of this is to have Wells Fargo have such an extraordinary. They want Wells Fargo's legal case to be as powerful as it can, such that they want to make sure that the evidence that I have never gets a fair hearing in a courtroom. Okay, the evidence that I have and the claims that I make can never be critically examined in any kind of courts. Okay, that they're going to, through a combination, one, they're going to intimidate my lawyer. If I get a lawyer, that's part of their plan, probably. Okay, they're going to have this huge case of everything. They're basically altering the facts. Every fact that exists, they're altering to favor Wells Fargo. So just to have the effect on the attorney, I get like, man, we don't have a case here. We've just got to settle. Now, the second thing that's important here, that may or may not be part of their plan. I'm not sure. To what extent that seems to play some role. Because the other thing is the way that Wells Fargo works is Wells Fargo, this bank has got, any given time, it's got $150 billion cash, $200 billion cash, plus liquid cash money. Okay, its total assets as of today are just a little less than 1.9 trillion. And so 1.9 trillion assets, 150 billion to 200 billion plus liquid cash. This bank has extraordinary resources such that $5 million, $1 million, $10 million is nothing to this bank. And figures in those amounts, $5 million, $10 million, stuff like that. Those figures are sufficient to corrupt anyone. Okay, then what's going to happen inevitably if I hire a lawyer to file a case, is Wells Fargo is going to pay off my lawyer to work against me and to get me to settle or to do whatever the hell that Wells Fargo. My lawyer will end up working for Wells Fargo's lawyer because Wells Fargo is going to offer them a fortune. To work against me, and of course you gotta understand, I'm mentally ill. I'm completely powerless. I have no recourse. Okay, so we got a situation here where the law, the punishments of the law, do not apply to Wells Fargo. So it's obviously illegal for Wells Fargo to pay off my lawyer like that. But who gives a damn? When the authorities, the highest levels of the government, the highest authorities in the land, also the lowest authorities in the land, and the middle authorities, federal, state, the whole thing, they're not going to do a damn thing to Wells Fargo. They're in fact participants and/or accomplices the participants in Wells Fargo's crimes and or accomplices in Wells Fargo's crimes. Okay, so that's one end of the coin. The punishments of the law, the consequences of the law do not apply to Wells Fargo, and the protections of the law do not apply to me because I have no credibility due to my mental illness, due to this being diagnosed after going to this hospital when I was 18. And so you put Wells Fargo's $10 million, the fact that they can flat out offer this to this attorney. There's not a damn thing I can do about it. There's not a damn thing that's going to happen to them. Okay, this whole situation, I guess the point is that they're going to nuke me. Okay, they're going to nuke my legal case. They're going to nuke me. This liability and it's going to be destroyed. It's going to be demolished. And Wells Fargo might offer some pathetic settlement amounts to like spit in my face because that's how these people at Wells Fargo are. They perceive themselves as deities. They're extremely arrogant. They take extreme offense at the notion that they're accountable to the law at all. And I've made that notion in filing this complaint. So they're going to really spit in my face and really be a bunch of assholes about it. But I need to go back. If these facts are ever heard in the courtroom, okay, well, what's going to happen is the extraordinarily suspect nature of my accounts, the extraordinarily suspect details that I have documented with these recorded phone calls and all of this stuff. Those are going to be public knowledge, and that's going to put the onus on the Justice Department to prosecute Wells Fargo. It's going to make it clear that Wells Fargo has committed very, very, very serious crimes against me. And at Wells Fargo, if you don't know this, they're what's called too big to fail. Okay, they're a bank that cannot fail. That's largely where they derive their impunity from, it seems to me. The people of this bank, they derive their impunity from this bank's too big to fail status. And this is going to be like an earth-changing event when they prosecute this bank. Okay, this is something that cannot happen. So it's like they've got to nuke my legal case. That basically I turned over to the Justice Department a complaint. I'm hoping, I wanted some kind of resolution. I wanted justice. I'm disabled for life. I suffer profoundly. And I wanted them to help me with my case, to give my case credibility, because again, I have no credibility, and this is what they're banking on, by the way. Atrium Health, Wells Fargo, all these people are very conscious of this. They know about how people are skeptical. That they don't give credibility to people that have diagnosed with mental illness. Stuff like this. They know this very well. That's a large reason that they're so pumped up to commit these vicious, ambitious felonies. And they know they can get away with it. Okay, Atrium Health is pumped up by the fact that their patients are mentally ill. That's how it works, and they will commit crimes against them with incredible ambition because they know that not a damn thing is going to happen to them over it. And so, I wanted the Justice Department to look at my facts, to give my case the credibility that it might not have, just with me alone. I would like to see these people punished. It wouldn't hurt my feelings to see them go to prison. I needed money most of all. Okay, for numerous reasons. I need money, and I'm entitled a whole lot in the way that I view things. Okay, that's another thing. I've sent these people offers telling them of enormous sums of money that I believe that I'm rightfully entitled out of what has occurred, and I can defend every one of them. I can defend 5 times of most of them. Okay, but what happens is I submit Wells Fargo's crime spree to criminal law enforcement authorities. Okay, unbeknownst to me, this is a pointless exercise. There's no point doing this whatsoever. There's no reason whatsoever to contact criminal law enforcement authorities about Wells Fargo, okay? Because Wells Fargo has criminal impunity, and what's going to happen to you is what happened to me, is the criminal law enforcement authority, instead of criminally prosecuting Wells Fargo, they're going to cooperatively engage with Wells Fargo to extend their impunity into the civil section of the law. Okay, that these authorities, again, Wells Fargo's too big to fail. Wells Fargo commits crimes left and right. They've committed millions of crimes against their customers, according to a filing. They signed an agreement with the Justice Department in February 2020, where they admitted to committing 4 million plus felonies against their customers. And so what happens is when they signed it, and it was a deferred prosecution agreement, by the way, is what they signed. They signed it. It's like, here, you've committed millions of felonies against your customers and creating these fake accounts, and this involves identity theft, falsifying bank records, millions of individual instances of those crimes. and they sign this agreement that we're going to defer prosecution. If you don't commit any more felonies, we're not going to prosecute you. And right there, when they sign that agreement, the fate of the world hinges on the conduct of the people at this bank. Okay, that if the people at this bank break the law again, they're going to have to prosecute them. They're going to have to prosecute a too big to fail bank, and a too big to fail bank is going to fail. That's what happens when you criminally prosecute a bank. Very likely consequence if they're charged to do business is going to be revoked. That's how the business as usual thing goes. Or that's how it's conceived to go. We don't have a business as usual because banks don't do things like they've done to me with all these crimes. Okay, so the fate of the world hinges on this bank and not committing more crimes. Unbeknownst to the Justice Department, for pretty much the entire time the Justice Department is negotiating with Wells Fargo about all of these crimes involving their customers. The whole time they're negotiating those crimes that culminated at the end of that, they had the deferred prosecution agreement. Wells Fargo is committing vicious crimes against me in parallel. Okay, so now the game has shifted. That the fate of the world no longer hinges on the people of the conduct of the people at the bank. The fate of the world hinges on the bank's prolonged impunity, because we can't punish this bank, and so that's the Justice Department. That's their motive for sponsoring this cover-up and for extending their impunity into the civil arena. They function to give the bank total impunity. And you'll see all of that in these videos as you watch them. But that's the major breakdown of the categories. We have the privacy violation that occurs in December 17. We have Wells Fargo's initial crimes, which also involved Atrium Health. We have Atrium Health with these two sections. Their initial they transitioned from being involved in this singular crime right here, to being outright phone at the mouth criminals. Atrium Health becomes involved in ongoing very serious crime. That's the second section here. Then the next marker in terms of these crimes is the background to healthcare fraud that occurs as Atrium Health and Wells Fargo work together to set the stage for a fraudulent claim that I've suffered from serious mental illness symptoms. And then the final section of crimes is what occurs once the U.S. DOJ begins to sponsor and to some extent participate in Wells Fargo's crimes, where the healthcare fraud goes from being setting the stage to outright blatant nonstop healthcare fraud. Those are the major sections. And what I will do now is I want to give you kind of a roadmap as to how to go about watching these videos. I want to give you a roadmap of each major section of these 18 sections, and I'll explain to you how to best go about watching these if you would like to participate and to kind of learn about this topic of public interest, and to possibly play detective yourself. Okay, so this first section is the privacy violation. I've already told you about that extensively, but I present my evidence for why Wells Fargo was obviously behind this. In this video, this video starts off slow in the beginning. Also, you got to remember that I have these in parts, and so you'll hear me making reference to, I'm going to the next video, I'm going to the next video, I'm going to the next video, and that's that's the remnants of this originally being a 6-part series, and that applies to all these videos. But you watch those videos, it will be blatantly unclear to you that Wells Fargo has engaged in a privacy violation. This mobile crisis scam, I go over this in quite a bit of detail. Again, these healthcare records that they created have been confirmed essentially as fraudulent by one professional. Had another PhD look at this, who essentially confirmed it as the same. These are obviously extraordinarily suspect. These notes that they're very ineptly unprepared. It's very obvious that these people are up to no good. This is not at all an honest healthcare record, and here is where you're introduced to an element of this. You're first introduced to an element of my case, is that my criminal case against this bank and its accomplices due to the nature of the crimes that have been committed against me, where they try to make fraudulent claims that I'm suffering from serious mental illness symptoms, and they reference my previous health history and stuff like this. The crimes I've been subjected to heavily involve the subject matter of psychology and also psychiatry. And so if you're a psychologist, you're a PhD psychologist, you're an MD psychiatrist, you for sure got the skill. This will all make sense to you. You will see what a load of shit I am subjected to throughout this crime spree. Now, if you're not one of those, even without credentials, I've showed this to people who have a background working in the legal field. I've showed as my evidence to people that work in technology. Okay, all kinds of different lay people that even without the knowledge, you will still be able to see. You'll get an 85% to 90% of the picture of how suspect and how obviously criminal what occurs is. Okay, it's undeniable. Now, in my evidence packets, going back to this mobile crisis scam, I've also got a set of videos that are longer. That last probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, 5 videos where I go over these bullshit notes that they make in detail if you want to dive into that. But this is an obvious scam, and I'll also show you where it's on public records that the crisis counselor named Allie Rowe paid off a mortgage that would have had a balance of somewhere around $186,000. She paid that off 3 months after visiting me. Okay, and you'll see some suspect stuff going on here. Now, the civil commitment, I drag this out. I do a legal analysis here as to what crimes are involved in this. I don't mention every crime that's involved in this, too, by the way. I made this video in 2022. I'm doing continuous research. And, I've discovered there are a lot of more serious crimes that I didn't mention. But I do an analysis of the crimes. I do an analysis of the evidence. And you will see here, I've got forged documents that I present to you. When put in light of the narrative and my account of what's happened, the rest of the circumstances, it's blatantly obvious that these documents have been forged, and that they're extraordinarily serious crimes that committed here. Okay, and then as I told you in the beginning of this video, near the beginning, I did end up staying in a hospital, and so this goes over my hospital stay. And when we go over this hospital stay, I introduce some things about Atrium Health, about some things that go wrong in this hospital stay. Why I'm staying at this hospital, that that will set the stage for a realization that I have as this continues, that Atrium Health is not at all what I've cracked them up to be the whole time that I've been going there, as at the time in question. And you will see how the professionals, and despite all the problems Atrium Health has, they half and half here, that they half of what they done here, that they knocked the ball out of the park. In terms of doing me right, they failed totally and completely in a despicable way, in ways that have huge consequences down the road. That as I'm in this hospital, I am coerced essentially, or compelled to give them phone numbers of people that I would rather not give them. I did not give them permission to put these numbers down as ongoing contacts. I gave them permission to call them once. And they put them down as ongoing contacts, and those numbers are on the hospital's records. And both of those numbers are people who eventually become criminal accomplices of Atrium Health, and become involved in ongoing HIPAA violations of Atrium Health. And I've discussed that in these videos. But this is the hospital stay, and you'll see how, again, on the half that they knocked the ball out of the park, they called bullshit on this whole thing completely. This civil commitment scam, it was bullshit from point A to point Z, and that they issued conclusions that were in stark contrast, okay, to the bullshit claims made in the civil commitment petition and the bullshit claims made by the mobile crisis counselors. Okay, and then here we have where Atrium Health, a lady at Atrium Health's finance department, is trying to get my social security number for the obvious purpose of ordering my medical records to be delivered to Wells Fargo. That's what the evidence adds up to here. You go through this video, you'll see that clearly. You'll see how I am, how through reasoning and analysis, it's obvious. So first off, I've got recorded phone calls where this lady is obviously up to no good. Okay, that there's no explanation for this whatsoever for her behavior, other than that she is trying to order my medical records. Then when I apply my reasoning to her behavior, the way she's acting, the way that she's she's committing a very serious crime, or she's attempting to, and even as I'm suspicious of her, she's not held back an inch. What that tells you, you got a risk-reward trade-off. She's taking an enormous risk, and she's not even concerned about it. There's a huge reward on the other end of that. And it's obvious that Wells Fargo is behind this, and what's happened is Wells Fargo has offered her a fortune to get my healthcare records. This is about my life back in the mountains, and it goes over my childhood and stuff like this. That this provides context as to why this was such a big deal to me. This section, though, if you're just looking to validate crimes, can be skipped. And this section here can also be skipped, where I explain my PTSD and how that develops. I've encountered some confusion, mainly among lay people, as to how the events that I've been subjected to here and here, how those resulted in a severe disabling post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I explain that some here as to how this was traumatizing to me. Then here, on this section, I have the least evidence of all in this section. And this section gets kind of long, and there's going to be a lot, for most people I think, there's going to be a lot that you don't understand here in terms of the way that I do analysis of people's behavior and try to explain how people are kind of, again, I've got a very, very, very well-developed, very, very acute ability to pick up on what people unintentionally let on. That ties back to my childhood and other things that I'll, that I don't want to explain here. You're going to be lost some. And for this HIPAA violations, there's one particular HIPAA violation that I have no evidence that I present in this video for that one HIPAA violation. The subsequent HIPAA violations, I've got some pretty good hard evidence. That overall you will be able to see, if you watch these videos through the end, you will be able to see that something very, very, very fishy is going on in Atrium Health, and you'll be able to see how, even if I don't have conclusive 100% proof for everything that I claim, in light of everything that you've seen here, which I do have huge evidence for the crimes up to that point, it will make sense to you, and you will fully understand and believe that Atrium Health is involved in ongoing illegal contact with all kinds of people, and that will become more apparent as we go on in the videos. Now, this overview of 2020, what I do here is, these HIPAA violations those occur originally between June and August of 2018. I become aware of some of them later on in about November of 19. The stage kind of changes, or the game kind of changes in 2020. So what I do here is I give you a 30,000 foot view, a kind of a summary and overview as to what to expect, and this will provide context for and kind of a roadmap for the rest of the videos. This Facebook scam, I don't know how to explain this. Wells Fargo is running a scam on Facebook, and I've proven this at this point with statistical analysis, but I go over the scam that Wells Fargo is running on Facebook, and you will see that when you get there. Okay, you'll see that. You can go over that, and of course this is something that you can also skip if you want, on my guess, but it's kind of interesting what I do here with this Facebook scam. And I've got extraordinarily powerful evidence for that Facebook scam. And then here we transition into this healthcare fraud. So this right here, this is background to healthcare fraud, no one health scam, background to final crimes, and final crimes. I have extraordinarily powerful evidence for this. Some of it, again, you're going to need to be a PhD psychologist or an MD psychiatrist who's pretty sharp to fully 100% grasp of what's going on here. But even a layperson, you'll be able to see how this is. They're up to very, very serious crimes. And again, the goal of this, that they're running a cover-up of Wells Fargo's crimes. They're running a cover-up of Atrium Health's crimes. And the fact that they are blatantly running a cover-up in these sections adds credibility to the fact that a slew of very, very serious crimes that pose an existential threat to Wells Fargo have occurred. And you'll see here that within these, I got the Facebook scam, then I go on to the healthcare fraud, and I've got some intermediate sections here that don't directly concern the crimes, and this is I'm providing a narrative of what happens. And first, I go into a narrative. I explain what happens when I submit my complaints in October of 2020. I do reference a crime that has occurred sometime between April 2020 and September 2020. Wells Fargo, I have conclusive evidence that I don't present here. Here I don't present, but they have obtained the healthcare records that they were out for from this hospital that I was at 18, that they were trying to get through this fraud. And that's part. They basically got those healthcare records illegally, and went and delivered them to the Justice Department, and tried to prejudice the Justice Department against me based on my mental health history. I talk about that, and that's another crime. That's the only other crime that I don't have hard evidence for. So there's a HIPAA violation that I don't have hard evidence for here. I'm involving the ongoing contact with Jenny that I don't present hard evidence for, and then here I don't present hard evidence for the fact that they've got these healthcare records, but they absolutely have. I've got very good evidence for that. I don't present here, but that's partly a narrative where I explain what happens when I submit my complaint, and then here. In this next section, I go and talk about a U-Girl, which is my shorthand name for an Australian model who does fitness modeling and does other modeling, who was very obviously offered a fortune by Wells Fargo and the Justice Department to be my girlfriend or my potential girlfriend. Okay, what happens is I go over in these videos is they Wells Fargo and the Justice Department have a series of models lined up for me, apparently, to see which one I like. The first one that they send after me is a U-Girl. And at one point, me and a U-Girl goes MIA. I'm off-putting to her, and she decides it's not whatever fortune she's been offered. And I've got another model IMing me. But I wanted a U-Girl, and so I ended up getting a U-Girl back on the line instead of talking to the other model. And what this is there for a long time, I believed that I was talking to the LA Times. I thought the LA Times was receiving my messages that I sent on their signal line. I mistook received receipts for read receipts, and I thought that they were going to do some kind of big story because I sent them my evidence. And the Justice Department and Wells Fargo were well aware of a possibility, or they were well convinced. They considered it a real possibility that there would be media coverage of everything that's happened. And so on one end, they've got to cover up these very, very serious crimes. They've got to nuke my legal case for those. But if they're in the media, they've got to look good for me. They're good, they got to look good for the media, and this is like a saintly, nice thing to do. They can, again, they're focused on their image. This will be a really grand gesture that Wells Fargo's done by getting me this fashion model to be, or this fitness model and other model. That's other modeling. I don't know if you call it fashion modeling, but get this model to be my girlfriend. And what happens is eventually they figure out that the media is not going to be involved, and so they cruelly take a U-Girl away from me. And a U-Girl, I mean, she works for them, and you'll see. I go over, I do an analysis of my I've got like a 900 pages long Facebook IM that I talked to a U-Girl from December of 2020 all the way up into August of 2021, and I do an analysis of that in this video, and you'll be able to see. How she was obviously sent by Wells Fargo, and that brings another point. Every bit of this, the whole thing, everything that happens is about Wells Fargo. It's about the fact that I pose a liability for Wells Fargo. So how do you connect these vicious crimes that they do here? How do you connect the merciless, cruel, and you will see the ruthless abuse they subject me to in these two sections that the Justice Department and Wells Fargo subject me to? How do you connect all of this? What's the common thread with that? I mean, getting me a model. Okay, well, it's all about Wells Fargo. The whole thing is about that I pose a liability to Wells Fargo. Okay, the Wells Fargo's interests are 100% of the Justice Department's concern. They're 100% of Wells Fargo's concern. And given that The Wells Fargo is Atrium Health's ticket to impunity. Wells Fargo is 100% of Atrium Health's concern. That's their end of the bargain. They've got to serve Wells Fargo's interest in return for being above the law in the same way that Wells Fargo is. And so, that's another key takeaway is everything you see these people do at any point, the lens you look at that through is, how does this serve the interest of Wells Fargo? Okay, that's the motive behind every single thing that everybody involved in this does. It's all about Wells Fargo's interest. Wells Fargo's interests are the most important thing in the entire universe, and there is no price that is too big to pay for Wells Fargo's interest. Okay, that's how it works. So that's from the perspective of the people at Wells Fargo. That's from the perspective of the people at the Justice Department, and it seems to very pretty much completely be the perspective of the Federal Reserve. Although I don't talk much about the Federal Reserve in this video series. But that's that, and that's the videos. I forgot to go over this section. The final wrap up. That's, you can skip that one too. I just kind of explain what happens to me after, again, I'm disabled. I need to get approved for disability so I can keep my apartment in Charlotte, which is all I cared about in the world was my life in Charlotte. And that's another takeaway is that when you go to do business with this bank, okay, you've got to be conscious that you do not matter at all. Okay, that when you're in their company, when you're in their territory of this bank, and this bank's interests matter more than anything. Unbeknownst to you, when you go to work for these people, you instantly become worth less than a cockroach. Okay. Now here's the thing. Here's how it works. You won't know that you're worth less than a cockroach as long as your interest and their interest align. Okay, so if you're a customer and you've got some products and you're paying late fees or you're paying on time and they're getting interest income off of you, you will be treated kindly, and you won't notice a huge conflict. Most likely, there are a lot of people that do. I've talked to a lot of them. This bank screws over a lot of people. Okay, but as long as your interest and their interest align, as long as you're serving their interest by giving them income, by doing work for them that they need you to do, that they can't otherwise get rid of you, you will have a sense that you're important. And when I worked for this bank, I was working miracles in their department for a long time. And it's like I'm the king of the world. And why am I the king of the world? Well, I'm not. I'm worth less than a cockroach, but I'm treated like the king of the world because Wells Fargo, acutely needed me for a while to serve their interests. Okay. Now, what you're going to find if you have a conflict to them at all. Okay, if at all your relationship goes from a relationship where it's it's a positive sum transaction where you benefit, they benefit. Okay, you're a customer, you've got some products, you need your credit card, you need your mortgage, you need your home. Okay, so you've got a need, they provide that need. They need interest revenue, they need interest income, they need payments, they need late fees, they need all this, and you're paying them. Okay, then your life is fine. But if it ever comes to a point where the pie has to be split, okay, that it's no longer 1 + 1 = 2. There's one to be had, and we've got to split it. So say they illegally foreclose on your home, or they do something else. Okay, so say they illegally foreclose on your home. We'll use that example. Okay, so there Wells Fargo's broken the law. And there's a potential consequence for Wells Fargo in terms of there's a vague potential, kind of not too high potential for some kind of civil penalty that they have to pay in terms of a civil lawsuit or something like this. If a court issues a judgment against them and says that they've done wrong, they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay some settlement to you that will be extremely small relative to their resources. It'll be like not even the shred of a dust of a penny relative to their resources that they'll have to pay you. But in addition to having to pay you something that's pathetic to them that they can easily afford, they will be exposed. If they're illegally foreclosing on you is made public knowledge, they will be exposed to public scrutiny, and their image will take a hit. Again, that this bank is accountable to the public and no one else. That there's nobody out there that has remotely any effect to influence the behavior of this bank other than the public. Okay, so the Federal Reserve is impotent. Okay, they participate in Wells Fargo's crimes. Don't even get me started on the Justice Department. Okay, I mean there's no level of disrespect from these people that the Justice Department will not tolerate. Okay, I mean these people, it's unbelievable. So Wells Fargo illegally forecloses on you. They've committed a crime. They're potentially exposed to public controversy, and what they're going to do is they're going to oppose you with ruthless, brutal force, and they're going to oppose you through vicious crimes, and there is no one to help you. Okay, there's nothing whatsoever, and the authorities and Wells Fargo and the regulators, every one of these people, I've seen this enough. I've been fighting this bank for years. I've been talking to people that have also fought this bank for years, and how it works. You call the regulators, you call the authorities. If you don't have the last details, I will leave. I've given you an overview, and again, I'll have the evidence. Is that if it's all confusing to you, if you don't understand why people would do this, specifically why the United States Department of Justice would sponsor a cover-up of Wells Fargo's crimes, I've got a video series on YouTube that's also posted on Twitter called "Why Does the United States of America Do This to Me?" Where I explain that in great detail. And so you can watch those videos. That I've got an airtight case for everything that all that remains for anybody who wants to be convinced is to go through all of this material that I've created. And this right here, these videos right here, plus the why the United States of America Do This to Me series will get you a real long way. I mean, there's a hell of a lot there. You'll really learn something, and you will see the truth of what I have said. Now, this is kind of a task here. We've got almost 22 hours total watch time. You can get it down to about 20 hours if you skip these sections. You can get it to a little under 20 hours if you skip this section. Okay, so you don't have to. There's no crimes involved there if you just want to analyze crimes. And the second thing, or the next thing that I'll say, is that as I've made these videos, I've been uncensored as I tend to be. Okay, that I say things exactly how they are, exactly how I see them. And in this case, there's a little bit of nuance that I haven't said things exactly as I see them. I have said things, a lot of the things that I've said in regards to the Justice Department, the authorities, the regulators. I have said things in terms of how I saw them in the past. These crimes go back, and again, this goes back to April 7th or December 17th when the law was violated. It goes back to April of 2019 when the first crimes occurred in these sections right here. I've been mercilessly abused for years. And, obviously all these sentiments I share about the authorities being pathetic, about nobody's going to do anything about this bank, those are my legitimate sentiments that I've had in the past. But you've also got to consider the bigger picture, and that's the main difference between me and the regulators and the authorities. They're the government. Okay, so the regulators, like the Federal Reserve, they're over the whole banking system of the whole earth, or not the whole earth, the whole United States. A huge concern, and then the rest of the federal government, including the Justice Department, they're overseeing the entire country. Okay, and now me, I live in my own world, basically. I'm autistic, and I'm very eccentric. I just do my own thing, and I am very much for the whole time, almost the whole time that I've been involved in this, I'm fighting with these people. And I've also been negotiating with them and trying to get them to help me and stuff like this. But the whole time, almost the whole time, it's like I'm focused on the microcosm of my own life to a fault, which is an extraordinarily small thing when compared to the bigger picture. Okay, and as the government, again, the regulators, the authorities, the federal government, they are by nature, they look at the big picture. Okay, so they're looking at the impact of this on the whole country. They're looking at the impact of this on the whole financial system, on the whole. I mean, there's enormous consequences. And you know, and I mean, with me and everyone else, me on my side, and everybody else on their side, looking at things through these incredibly different lenses, you know, we're going to be at odds. Now the issue is, or the maybe the crux of the issue is that neither one of these perspectives are invalid. They seem to be, at first glance, mutually exclusive perspectives. Okay, that if we look at me in the microcosm and we go and do what we're going to do to this bank over these crimes and all this crazy stuff, which this is something that's just snowballed over time into something insane. Okay, and part of the picture is I won't give this up, and the reason is, and they're starting to realize this, I believe, in recent months, they've started to bite the bullet and realize that this is something I can't give this up. Okay, you can't tell it listening to me talk to you, but I am profoundly handicapped. I cannot take care of myself. I suffer like hell. You know, all these crimes have caused repeated stress hormone overloads to my brain, and it's obvious to me. I haven't been diagnosed, but I've done a lot of research. It's obvious to me that these stress hormone overloads have caused lasting brain damage. Okay, it is an mentally exhausting thing for me to open a Pepsi can, to pop the top of a Pepsi can. I mean, I feel the impact really, really, really intensely. And say I've been doing something like the only thing that I'm really able to do anymore, like I used to be able to do, is do things on my computer like this, make documents, you know, write a website code or software code, web software code, things like that. Say I've been doing some software code for 15 or 20 or 25 minutes. My brain will be overwhelmed, kind of like it's overwhelmed now. Like I can feel a real powerful, distressing feeling of my brain working too hard from making these videos, particularly the last few. You know, if I'm already at that point and I go to open a Pepsi can, it is something I experience it very intensely. It is literally painful. Okay, I live in a dumpster, you know, in my little room here, and not a literal dumpster, but, you know, my room here, my mother's tiny apartment after my life collapsed in Charlotte. You know, I got evicted. I had to move in with my mother in a tiny apartment. I've got a tiny room, and I can't clean this thing to save my life. It exhausts my brain. Like I've got water bottles in the floor, and to pick up these water bottles absolutely kills me to the extent that you know, when they get covered, when it gets to the point that they're completely covered in the floor that I can't even walk. Then you know, I'll start to clean them out. Then I'll clear out enough part where I can walk, and I clean them up a little bit at a time. Or I get my mother to come in here and clean them up. But my brain is profoundly damaged. I cannot do anything, and so I cannot afford to lose this. Okay, but that's, you know, get back on track. That's part of the picture is I won't drop this. Okay, it's like they're defending all the people on their side. They've got this huge interest that are not only their interest, but are also the interest of the entire country. That are very important, and it's like they're getting desperate, more and more desperate, trying to dig their way out of a hole and covering up this stuff and doing what they can to shoo away the facts and to shoo away this unpleasant reality. And you know, I could have, at any point in time past this, okay, so my life is destroyed right here. This caused me unbelievable pain, it destroyed my life completely, or felt like completely, so now my life is destroyed completely, but it felt like, I can't tell you the pain that this caused me, what they did right here. But, you know, so I could have dropped it right here and went on with life, and none of this would have happened, okay? And that doesn't make it my fault. But these, you know, the same rule applies all the way down. It's like I drop it right here. None of this happens. I drop it right here. You know, my persistence has contributed to this snowball effect. So that's a factor. But again, from my perspective, I worked my whole life. I did nothing but work my whole life. Okay, work and study. That's about all that I've done since I was about 20 years old. And I even worked a hell of a lot. You know, put my first 70-hour weekend probably when I was 17 years old. Had a job at a restaurant. You know, I've killed myself working my whole life. to be disabled and handicapped for nothing. When I wouldn't put it down here, but I offered them I offered to sign a non-disclosure agreement if they would just talk to me and explain what happened and let me have my input. I want to have a conversation. I offered a non-disclosure agreement. I offered no consequences repeatedly to Jenny and Tony, and they do all of this. Okay, so I don't deserve this. My life needs to be made whole in a really, really, really big way, or rather, my life cannot be made whole, and I need to be compensated for the massive losses that I have incurred and the ungodly suffering that I have endured, which is unbelievable what these people have done to me. I cannot tell you. Maybe I'll make another video some other time to fully explain just how much I've suffered, but it's horrible. Okay, so from my perspective of me needing to be made whole, that's not an invalid perspective. And their perspective of needing to protect the economy of the entire earth, through these too big to fail banks, needing to not overly burden every large financial institution, every medium-sized financial institution, every small-sized financial institution with a more regulation and more pointless paperwork and more pointless red tape. That ultimately, these regulations are a double-edged sword. They can help. They help people. They do good for the outside world by putting constraints on behavior and kind of the intentions are always good behind these regulations, and the intentions that they will pan out a lot of times. That's how I see it. You put out a regulation that's not even to think about banking, but just any general industry, that you put out a regulation to stop polluting or to limit polluting. A lot of times, that works out. That you put that regulation in, the pollution will go down. Okay, so you have a net benefit to the environment, and the public at large will benefit from that. On the other end of the bargain, though, is that these regulations, when they pile up and pile up and pile up, especially as they start to impair businesses from serving customers. Okay, and they start to add all kinds of crazy overhead where they've got to have a new section of their compliance department, and they've got to have all kinds of work, all kinds of red tape, all kinds of paperwork, and of course, when they got paperwork to fill out to document their compliance with this regulation, now we've got to have a bunch of work for a bunch of people in the government to do to process some more paperwork, as if we're not already buried in paperwork already. Okay, and again, the notion of prosecuting a bank like this is absolutely insane. Okay, and that's what I'm exposed to them to. That's what I'm kind of putting in their court, even though that I never wanted the bank prosecuted. From the perspective of a lot of people, that would be the appropriate thing to do. It's absolutely insane. Okay, so their perspective is also not invalid at all. Okay, but we seem to be in a zero-sum game, because if we focus on the microcosm of my own life, then we've got to fuck up the big picture. And if we focus on the big picture and work to protect the interests of the big picture, then we've got to leave me to stay here and suffer some more. And in relation to these conflicting, the big picture and the small picture, conflicting. There's another aspect of this that has to be put out there that's extremely relevant. That's probably this aspect that I'm about to give you defines this whole situation more so than anything. That what has happened with me and between me and this bank and everyone else involved is an extraordinary exception. Okay, this is like a 1 in 200-year event or something like that. And when you put in the picture of how many large financial institutions that we have, Wells Fargo's up there. They're among the largest in the top 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5 largest financial institutions. But you've got another 5 that are in the top 10 that are not extremely less, smaller than them. So when you factor in that you've got however many financial institutions you want to include in the sample, whether you want to include the top 10, the top 7, the top 15, and this has happened, this crazy thing with me has happened one single time over a period of 200 years, it is an extraordinary exception. And in regards to the way the authorities have handled this, that also ties back to the fact that this is an exception. It's an extraordinary exception. It's something that was never supposed to happen, that never has happened. So they don't have any procedure or any policy or anything in place in anticipation of this as to what to do when we have a situation like this. Okay? There's no roadmap. There's no blueprints. And the existing roadmaps and blueprints we do have for other situations that bear no resemblance to this, would seem to indicate that we've got to do a massive overhaul of the financial system. We've got to introduce a massive body of regulations. We've got to do a massive intervention. It's just like wide scale, huge, extensive action on the part of the government and the government in general, Congress, and then the regulators, the authorities, the OCC, the Federal Reserve. That it's like we got to do a really, really, really big, huge overturn of how we do things. That's what the blueprints, the existing blueprints that we have for other situations that don't resemble this at all. That's the direction that they would seem to point us in. In relation to me, that's the mistake that I've made for a long time now. Particularly since the Justice Department got involved, and particularly since I realized that the Justice Department was not out to help me; they were out to protect this bank's interests and the interests of all the millions or billions of third parties that could be affected. That's what they're out for. I wasn't so much thinking about the billions of people because I didn't fully understand that. I didn't understand why this was such a big deal to them. I thought they'd just be able to go and make an announcement. Hey, we got this bank. It did something horrible. We got to find an outside of the box solution here. So we're going to make them give him a boatload of money so he can keep his life in Charlotte, and then we're going to move on. I didn't realize all the implications. I didn't realize I had no detailed sense of how this bank's conduct, the conduct of the people in this bank, are tied to the broader economy in relation to this situation with me. The stuff that I'm telling you about, the big picture and all this, this is something that I've learned over time through deliberate study and also just kind of observing what happens over time. I get a sense of how things work. I, again, thinking in terms of the microcosm of my own life, I take everything personally. Okay, it's like it's against me, or it's me and them, and they don't like me, and I'm always sending them documents and audios and stuff, trying to explain what a nice guy that I am. Why don't they like me, and why are they doing this? Even as I took it personal, I generalize my situation to everything that occurs. Okay, that I've been subjected to some form of dishonest behavior, of extraordinary unethical cover-ups, stuff like this. That the parameters of my situation, if you just look at it from my perspective, you get the impression that we have this system where banks like Wells Fargo do what the hell they want, people like me, have nobody to help them. Similar to stuff that I've said in these videos. And again, I say that in these videos because I've thought that way for so long. It's only been recently that I've put the picture together as to how this whole thing works, and so I extended that not just to Wells Fargo, but every financial institution on over to every single powerful institution, big business that has power and lawyers and billions of dollars, and all of these. I've taken this massively this extraordinarily rare, exceptional occurrence with me, and generalize it in a huge way, as if the exception is the rule. Okay, that's what I have done, and I've been talking shit on Twitter, an X platform. Twitter turned into X platform. I've been talking shit on X platform. And before that, I was talking shit on Twitter about about the justice system, the Justice Department, the regulators, all of this, and my criticisms. in my lambasting and my kind of I'll be demeaning in how I characterize them at times and kind of mean about it. Those are all instances of the same thing. Where I'm taking the most extraordinary exception and just generalizing. This is how the whole thing works at the level of the big picture. Now, this is irrelevant facts. If you go back to these mutually exclusive, we got the big picture, we got the microcosm of my own life. And the problem at the level of the big picture is that we have no roadmap, and the roadmaps that we do have would seem to indicate that we've got to do a massive overhaul. We've got to prosecute a $2 trillion bank, and that's going to be a 10 or 15 year long trial. God only knows how long that would be. It was absolutely insane. In the process, we're going to have the FDIC go and seize a bank and do this bullshit, and that's going to be absolutely ridiculous. It's a nightmare. It's just something that cannot happen. All of this big hoorah. That would seem to not be justified, unless when you take the consequences of doing something like that, prosecuting this bank, overhauling the financial system, implementing a whole 700-page book of regulations, and all of this massive stuff. It's like, what do you think would justify that? What would be so severe that would come out of the banking sector as to warrant such an extreme intervention? Okay, and you think of things like some massive crime against humanity, assassination of a foreign leader by a banking executive, something crazy like that. You don't intuitively think of the microcosm of my own life and the fact that I've been murdered by these people. So to me, it's like the solution is clear. And maybe the Justice Department didn't realize this when I first sent this to him. It's like I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was very open to an out of the box solution for this. And what we don't do is we don't want to treat to go back to this thing where we're going to have all these broad interventions and all this. What they're doing there is they're doing the same exact thing that I'm doing as a mistake. As they're treating an extraordinarily rare exception as the rule, as if this is going to be, or as if this is and will be some persistent feature of the financial system where we have people going on a snowballing battle like this, which again, I'm going to cut this short here in a second. But what happens here is they destroy my life right here. They don't understand why they destroyed my life, and they don't seem to really care. They seem to be very, very focused on their own interests. I wouldn't drop it, and so then they do this, and this leaves me disabled. I have no, at that point, I have no choice, and really, I didn't have a choice to drop it here, really. But especially here, I have no choice because I'm disabled for life from this part right here on. And my disability, as this crime spree goes along, I'm hit with more psychologically traumatic events that cause a stress hormone overload to my brain. And so it's like the quitting is not an option for me. And these people have been kind of like in reactive mode, where it's like they've got these huge interests. Okay, it's like the biggest interest in the world, first off with the bank, and then when you look at the broader picture, they've got these huge interests, and they're like in reactive mode of trying to snuff out every liability that pops up, and every attempt that they make to snuff it out. Another liability, and they're snuffing it out, creates another liability, and that is again, it's like a snowball of a never-ending cycle that repeats over and over again. And on each iteration of this cycle, the snowball gets that much bigger, and that's why we've got the absolute. It's absolutely insane. This whole thing right here, considered in its entirety, not even to mention what's happened since 2022. Okay, so the solution to this, of all this, where it's like we've got to do all these massive actions, is just to not do those. Okay, when that's what gets in the way of me getting justice. All of this massive overhaul that would seem to be required of this of the situation with me. That's what gets in the way of giving me justice and making it right with me. then we just don't do that. We just kick that to the side. We're not going to do that. That's the solution to that problem. Okay, if they get rid of that, say we're just not going to do that. We're not going to take 1 in 200 years exception or 1 in 1,000 years. I don't think that anything like this will ever happen again with what's happened with me right now. At least right now, as I've been reflecting on this, I've never heard of anything like this in my whole life. I've never seen anything. This is absolutely insane. And so they can just say, well, we've got a catch-22 here, that we can't follow these blueprints that we have for this other stuff. We don't have a blueprint for this. What this would seem to require to a lot of people is to take a big, massive action on a wide scale, and we're just not going to do that. Okay, we're just not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. We're going to make it right with him, and again, I deserve to be made right in a very, very big way, and you will see that when you see how I've suffered. Okay, but that's what they do. And then the picture, and then the situation is solved, and they can make a policy. Again, nothing like this will ever happen. These specific events in particular are it's like out of this world. What's happened to me, but for extra insurance, they can work on having a policy on what happens when something similar to this or something on some scale, something like this happens again. They can set a policy and a procedure and have a blueprint in place that takes into account the exceptional nature of the circumstance, and also takes that into account the extreme asymmetry involved when you have a single individual person taking on a bank with trillions of dollars of assets. So one level of that is the bank is obviously extremely more powerful than the person. But the other aspect is the bank plays an enormous role, hundreds of millions, billions of times. You can't. I don't know what you would. I don't know what factor you would have to apply or how you would state just how outsized this bank's role in the broader economy, this bank's role in the world is, relative to me or relative to any other this individual person who has something bad like this happen to them. Okay, you've got millions of businesses that are relying. So right now, as we speak, there are millions of businesses that at this moment are relying on this bank's services. There are essential services they provide, like debit card processing, credit card processing, their capital, lines of credit, all of this. That's millions of businesses there. Okay, and so when we have a one-off situation like this, in the actual reality of the situation, there's no way to scale down the asymmetry involved. Okay, and so what you do is in your policy, you scale it down, and you factor in to the account that this is one person. They've been done horribly, and we want to impose a consequence on the bank that's going to curtail this behavior, like we do anytime we do any kind of a penalty or punishments. But we're not going to go and upend the operations of the entire earth over this, because that's insane. So this is the conclusion of these videos. The last thing that I will say to close, and I hope you enjoyed this. And if this is an interesting case to go through, and the last thing I'll remind you or tell you is that these are best watched sequentially. Okay, these videos, so you watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That if you haven't watched all of this, this right here is not going to make as much sense to you. Send me questions, message me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. I don't tend to respond to YouTube comments much, but you'll be able to find me. I've got a website, and if you have questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer. And you will also again be provided with the evidence. So happy watching.